Welcome back to the Man Cave, everybody, for another episode of the ManTFup podcast. I'm Kimmy B.
And Lenny.
Before we go any further, remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow. Get ready to drop your comments on any of the social clips you might be catching. And then, obviously, we want to make sure that you are following, in particular, our YouTube channel, because that is where you can watch the full episodes of the ManTFup podcast. And obviously, you can stream us anywhere you stream your podcast. It is an election year, Len.
Welcome.
And, you know, if we're being 100% honest, the ManTFup podcast was kind of born out of the last election cycle, the big election cycle, right, of 2020. You and I started sitting on this couch in 2021. Obviously, we know we have an election year, and the president is inaugurated the following January. But anyway, let's get into it. The Iowa caucus just happened, right?
Yep.
And there have been some interesting developments and headlines coming out of it, as there always are. But with former President Donald Trump all up in the race, you know, there's going to be extra coverage and extra headlines. I know, Lenny, you came across a very interesting clip that you played as soon as I walked in the door today and got me all fired up. So let's go ahead and give it to the ManTFup fam.
Yeah, so this is Rachel Maddow on CNN.
Okay.
This just for a second. At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech, if there's anything noteworthy, something substantive and important. The reason I'm saying this is, of course, there is a reason that we and other news organizations have generally stopped giving an unfiltered live platform to remarks by former President Trump. It is not out of spite. It is not a decision that we relish. It is a decision that we regularly revisit. And honestly, earnestly, it is not an easy decision, but there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things. That is a fundamental truth of our business and who we are. And so his remarks tonight will not air here live. We will monitor them and let you know about.
So they will monitor it for us, and they will let us know if there's anything noteworthy. They'll let us know, rather than just playing the speech, being a network that informs people and lets us hear from the winner of that evening. They decided that we're too stupid to hear it and make up our own minds about whether, you know, the information is truthful or not. And this is the democracy they speak of. How is this different from certain countries who filter everything so that people don't get the information that's out there?
Okay. So can I address the woman who is talking on the back end of what Rachel Maddow said? Well, first of all, this isn't state-sponsored news. That's a decision that a board and producers and the folks that run CNN as a network collectively go into a room and decide.
So is it news or is it entertainment? Because news, to me, growing up...
News has 100% become entertainment. You can thank Rupert Murdoch for that.
Yeah, okay. So it's not really news. It's not really what's really happening. It's what they want you to see is happening.
Okay, but again, she's talking about our democracy. That has nothing to do with CNN. CNN actually, under our democracy, has the right to do that. Right?
Of course.
Has the right. That's
of course. It's a private company.
Freedom of speech, all of those things, they can collectively choose. Just like you have another choice, because it's not state-sponsored news, that is not your only outlet to get your information. So clearly this is not a CNN fan or watcher. When she talks about how is this different from other governments who censor, again, that's not the government censoring the news that we're getting. That would be like if the government said, no, you can no longer come in.
No, it's somebody censoring it on behalf of a party.
Well, on behalf of a party.
Yes, it's somebody censoring the news on behalf of the Democratic Party.
You're making a very broad, sweeping generalization, because there are moderate Republicans in this country that don't really want to hear what he has to say. Also, if he's going to get up there and spew lies, the problem is this: he did it. It's frustrating because I understand what you're saying.
Is he the only politician that's ever lied?
He's the only politician who has ever stood up there and literally drilled home for 4 years that he won an election that he did not win.
Okay.
He's the
is he
only politician that has
that ever
stood
lied?
on a stage. That's not what we're talking about. That's not where this whole issue has come from. It's not about him telling lies. No, we know that.
Listen,
that's when you see the
CNN is not liable for what Trump says. So from a liability standpoint, they're not liable for what Trump says at the fucking Iowa caucus if they just broadcast it. They're not liable. So
you do have a social. You do have a degree of social responsibility. It's the same. That's like saying, when you back a candidate, you're not liable if everything they say is fraudulent as a corporation or as an entity, right? If your patrons find out that you sponsored a candidate's campaign and then choose not to spend their money with you, right? That's what she's talking about. There's a cost incurred when we knowingly broadcast fraudulent information, and unfortunately,
do you feel like he's guilty of all the things they're indicting him for?
Lenny, that's not what we're talking about. Do you feel like, does he get up there and how many
goes
times
to fraudulence?
Len, how many times has he been fact checked? It's when he gets up there and just spews off at the mouth fact-based statistics. He does it all the time. We know this. So it's like, okay, when you have to spend more time fact-checking a 30-minute tirade about either how grandiose, how great he lies about his own accomplishments. He lies about the things that his administration did. He lies about the things that this current administration is doing or previous administrations have done. And then you spend more time fact-checking and having to literally print retractions and all of these other things. So if he says truthful, and again, they're not your only outlet. So I fully understand from a, unbiased, what is the news really supposed to do perspective, what kind of information are they giving us? But they're also owning why they're not doing it. So they're putting it right out there. Hey,
they're owning that. Well, she claims they're owning it because they don't want to be liable.
In that moment, she just told you, we are not going to air this man live, which means what can you do as a person? I can jump on X because I'm sure there's somebody there streaming it live. I can go to another news network and see if they are reporting on it. I can go to any one of the 10,000 podcasts that are now out and other more.
And they're not doing it because I know some diehard CNN watchers. Mm-hmm. So these people aren't going to change their channel. They're just going to say, oh, well, CNN's not doing it, so I'm not doing it.
If they don't want to hear what he has to say in a victory speech at the Iowa caucus, what does that matter? Can I tell you what my bigger issue is? This is a man who has deliberately and repeatedly said he will not engage in debates. That's a bigger part of our political process than his victory speech at the Iowa caucus. No? You don't think so? You don't think him going toe-to-toe with other candidates and expressing his views, his platforms, what he plans to do, you don't think that that's as important? Seeing him engage with a little healthy competition, seeing his buttons get pushed when he sits
any politicians anymore. I don't trust any of them.
What does that have to do with? But
I don't trust DeSantis.
That was what
I don't trust Newsom. I mean, how could they even think about putting Newsom up if you look at the state of California right now? How could they even think about?
You realize that Californians reelected this man. You realize that, right? So clearly all of California doesn't necessarily think they're in the worst space possible.
No, predominantly the people who live in the big cities that were used to be beautiful and now you can't walk the streets.
I have a lot of friends that live in Los Angeles and in San Francisco, and yes, they're dealing with severe homelessness issues, which we know many American cities are dealing with. You can still get around LA. LA is still pretty fly. Yeah. I mean,
San Francisco used to be one of the most beautiful cities you could go to.
When was the last time you were in San Francisco?
2014.
Okay. San Francisco is still a pretty attractive. Like, I know people that still go on vacation there and they hit up Fisherman's Wharf. You know what I mean? They go to the pier.
I don't know. The crime rate's pretty high.
The crime rate is pretty high in Miami, and people still come here all the time. They flock here. They get robbed and come back. I got robbed in Paris, and guess what? It's my favorite city on the planet. So, I mean, like, let's talk about what we're talking about, which is right now
censorship.
having to do with a political figure who knowingly defrauded the American public, which then led to an insurrection.
You keep saying that. He knowingly frauded the American public. So did fucking every goddamn politician.
Not about an election, Len. Not about winning or losing an election.
Oh, jeez.
Stop it.
Pick and choose your fucking battles. This guy can lie to us about COVID and all kinds of other fucking shit.
They're lying about COVID? You know. What are they lying about COVID? It's real. It's here.
Yeah.
And what?
And we need to be locked down for 3 years because of it.
First of all, a year and a half of that was during Trump's, or a year of it was during Trump. What are you talking about? Ugh. He's the man. We went into lockdown under that administration.
Yeah, for a month.
What do you mean for a month? He was in office that entire time up until, for the entire first year of COVID, he was in office. It was his administration. He was standing up there shoulder to shoulder with Fauci. It was all of his people. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about
and the red states. I'm talking
about what they did. They pushed servicemen out because they wouldn't get vaccinated. Mm-hmm. They've really done a lot of shit based on a lot of shit that wasn't real. There's a lot of everything. If you go back to what they started telling us day one, it's going to be 3 weeks. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. It's going to be this. This will help you. This will do this. This will. Exactly. Nobody knew. So let's go to the extreme. Let's go to the extreme and fucking take soldiers out of the army because they won't get fucking vaccinated.
Most people in this, there's such a bigger conversation.
We lost way more people in the Spanish flu.
Lenny, that was over 100 years ago.
I would hope
we've made medical fucking advances in 100 years. Where if a global pandemic hit,
we've made plenty of medical advances.
Okay, we have the highest so why are you comparing it? Why are you comparing it to something that happened 100 years ago?
Highest rate of people taking medication. Yeah,
Lenny,
we've made
Jesus
advances.
Christ. The fact that you would you're too smart for that. Don't compare a pandemic from 100 years ago and
the fact that they all fucking lie, Kimmy.
Okay, but.
They all lie. Can you trust the government?
Do you trust
the government?
Lenny, stick to the point.
This is the point.
I do.
You're talking about a person.
Bro. I can't.
You're talking about a specific person that lied.
You're talking about somebody who literally incited an insurrection on our Capitol where they tried to stop constitutional procedure from moving forward to ratify an election that was voted on by the American people. Yes, I take major issue with that. He stood there and told them, by all means necessary. And then continued to push it home, tried to wield his power to get votes overturned in states. I mean, his own party. It's wild to me that you can sit there when you want to talk about real democracy, you want to talk about a problem, that's a problem. CNN not airing a victory speech from the Iowa caucus is not the problem to me. Because I got Fox. There's a million other places. Now, if the government was sitting there blacking it out, okay. Guess what? The news hasn't been the news in a very, very long... And again, you can thank your boy, Rupert Murdoch, and the guys over at Fox.
That's fine, but people still believe in it, Kimmy.
That's across the board, Len. So this isn't just a CNN issue because there's shit that airs on Fox that people believe, right? Again, it's so much bigger than that because guess what? So I didn't hear his speech. If I want to hear it, I can find it. So how many times... We got to go back to this. Man the fuck up, sis. You want to hear what the man had to say? All you got to do is Google. It's up there. It's somewhere. You're going to hear it. Unedited, unabated, all of it. You can find it. Stop being fucking lazy. You need everything handed. There was a time when you had to read a whole newspaper, right? There was a time when you
turned on every channel and had the same story.
No, I'm talking about, though, the fact that there was a time when people campaigned in this country and you actually had to get up off your fat, lazy ass and go see them in person to hear what they were talking about. Or you had to gather around your neighbor's radio because they were the only one that had it to listen to the actual debate, right? There was a time when that was bigger than the Super Bowl. I get that the Super Bowl didn't exist at the time, but you understand, that was an event. Hearing a presidential debate, and now we've got candidates just saying, I'm not doing that shit. I'm not doing it. So to the person who's on the fence, who would like to hear, who actually cares about politics, who actually cares about policy, who actually wants to know what their candidates stand for, right? Now I don't even get the opportunity to hear what you're talking about because you don't think it's worth your time. Like, go fuck yourself. So as an American voter, I'm not worth your time? You don't want to try to convince me to vote for you?
Do you think there's people in this country that only have, limited access to things? I mean, there's a big portion of this country that doesn't even have internet. Do you know that? That's what Starlink is all about.
Guess what? If you go to the public library, you got it. Oh, but again, that's public programming.
It doesn't make sense that a presidential speech, a candidate's speach, wouldn't just be broadcast. You could then go back and say, we don't endorse any of this. We don't know that this is fact, but this is his speech. It's wrong. Freedom of speech. Why wouldn't you just put it out there? It's a different agenda. They're not putting it out there because they don't want that deep. They don't want that. Yeah. No, they're not putting it out there because they don't want that diehard CNN fan to fucking change their mind and like him. That's why they're not putting it out there. That's why they're not putting it out there.
Hilarious today, right now.
That's why they're not putting it out there.
Because you think the diehard.
So my fucking in-laws would never fucking turn off CNN.
But guess what? They just told me if I wanted to see him, you think his victory speech in Iowa is going to make me change my mind about him?
Who knows? Maybe Vivek walking out on stage and endorsing him. Maybe other things. Yeah, maybe some things might change your mind. Did
they not show Vivek endorsing him?
No, they didn't show anything from...
They didn't show anything from the Iowa caucus? I don't believe that for a second.
Okay. She said right there, we're not
going to show his victory speech.
That was when Vivek came out and endorsed him.
Okay. Who?
Vivek.
And I know exactly who he is, but like who?
Yeah. That's, whatever.
Unfortunately, the rift goes much deeper. I think you're... Once again, you're taking... agency away from the American people and saying that we don't know how to find information or, that literally whatever CNN shows me is what I'm going to take as gospel. But if you're going to say that about the CNN
there's
person.
People that do.
So, yeah, but that's on the other side as well, Len. So,
that's fine.
So at least CNN was
fine.
honest.
Do you think Fox is not going to show the Democratic?
I think 100% Fox censors the shit that they put on air. 100, the same exact way, only CNN admits it.
Their speech. If they're not going to show the Democratic speech, then I have a problem with them too.
They're not telling you what they're not showing though. That's the funny thing about it. Like
live. Live is. I
don't know a whole lot of.
Live is very hard to edit.
I don't know a whole lot of people. Like I'm not sitting there with Fox on 24/7 just to try to catch them in what they're not showing me. Well, they're showing this over here. And we've done the side, by the way, they've done the side-by-sides and the compare and contrast of how shit is reported, what the narrative is. And we already know that the spin is very different on both of those networks, right? Like we already know that. If you think for a second that Rupert and his goon squad or Roger Ailes weren't sitting there talking about what should and shouldn't be shown,
or Turner. Any one of them. Anyone.
You're sadly mistaken.
It's my point is that the people in this
watch the BBC
country. I mean, I don't even know that's. I think he probably owns that too.
No, BBC is states. BBC is actually. I mean, the Brits are a little different than us, and they give very unfiltered.
People are still in charge.
No, but. Okay. When 9/11, yeah, but let me give you an example. When 9/11 happened, the day it happened, the BBC was showing unfiltered footage of what was really happening in those towers. People jumping, people hanging out of windows. I didn't see that for over a year from American news networks. And I understand that it was to protect the American people, to folks who were in, PTS, all of these things. But the BBC is pretty, that's one of the things that they're known for. They're very, the Brits are just dry and that's how they operate. They're like, this is what it is. Here you go. Do with it what you will. Now, I can't say that that's what they report about their own, but I think that they do. Whenever I've watched the BBC, they give a very straightforward information, and you still have those massively divided parties. You know what I'm saying? Because people intrinsically stick to their values, you know what I mean? And the people who are passionate about one thing, that is their driving force. And we know that. And so for people like me, when it comes to President Trump, like I listen to the conversations with you and other folks. Funny, I was at a restaurant.
And you know I'm not a
I know.
diehard supporter.
But are you
Trump.
ready? To your point, I'm gonna literally just kind of feed this one to you. I was at a restaurant in Pembroke Gardens the other night, and there were two gentlemen that came in. They were sitting there, and they started lowly, like, you know, in a lower cadence, talking about the upcoming election, and they're centrists, you know. And they actually mentioned a lot of the things that frustrate me about Trump outside of the one big red flag, right? And they were like, you know, I just wish he was a better statesman. That's where a lot of people, you know, get him, you know, the fact that he's crass and he just, you know, just says the first thing that comes to his mind. And, you know, I respect a lot of his business policies. So those people are clearly out there. It's the conversation you and I have had many times about him or candidates similar to him.
I think there's not a politician on the planet that's not thinking the same thing Trump spews, just doesn't spew it.
Shithole countries? I don't think so.
Okay. I would bet that they think the same thing. They just know better than to spew it out.
No, you have people
filter themselves.
You have politicians. No, I don't. Yeah. I don't agree with you because we're not all cut from that cloth. Like, you know, we're not. So I'm going to disagree with you there. You know, I don't think that all politicians think all Latinos are rapists and murderers and drug dealers. Which
no, I don't think he thinks they all are.
But he said it, and he said it in those words. And I realized it was a long time ago, so before you get in the comments, I'm like, why are you bringing up bullshit? I'm just making a point. He doesn't think before he speaks. And to me, some of the things that he says are a true reflection, of how he feels about large swaths of the American population. You know what I'm saying? Do we have issues? Yes. Do I think that CNN knowingly and openly saying they're not doing something for XYZ reasons is at the top of the list of problems we have? No. Like, if they were trying to be subversive about it, if they were trying to hide it from us, like, oh, we don't know what happened, the feed went out, like, I don't know, that would be a little shadier. Rachel Maddow is the one who's got to take the heat for that. You think she wanted to sit there on television and be like, so, we're not going to show you, because she already knows that this is exactly what's going to happen. Oh, they're keeping information from the American people. They're one-sided. They're jaded. They work for the government. So is the other side.
Okay. Again, you just made a statement.
They make vines.
You just made a statement that you said 5 minutes ago you haven't watched and proved. So it's like, I mean, it's like, show me on Fox where they said we're not gonna post any Democratic speeches or any Democratic.
They didn't say that, Len. They talked about one person who literally incited an insurrection, who was a former president who's under 47 federal charges, who's been indicted in how many states at this point in time? Like, pretty much every state he's had a campaign stop in. Like, it's wild. You're talking about one person. This isn't carte blanche across the board. They haven't. But
you don't think that's a little shady?
They haven't edited out Vivek's speeches. They haven't not shown any of the other, debates with any of these candidates who I'm sure they don't agree with. DeSantis has had a lot of negative ass press and headlines.
Fox loves to play Biden speeches.
Yeah, I wonder why. And they love to put on repeat when he slips up on a word. They love to show him fall. Like they make music videos to him falling. Like, I get it. Like, you don't think that that's trying to intentionally discredit the leader of this nation?
But don't you think the leader of this nation is discrediting himself because they're not editing it? They're not editing what he says.
How disrespectful is that, though? Like, really and truthfully, you don't think that let's rewind.
If you think,
can I tell you something? Okay,
they put Biden up in his speeches because they want you to know he's fucking losing his shit. They don't put Trump up with his speeches so that you know he's lying. I mean, it's like, if you want to embarrass somebody, if you think he talks...
How many times do we have to see him say the same shit? We've been watching it for the past 8 years, Len. Same shit. You're talking about one speech. Like, this is hilarious to me. You're talking about one speech. He's had plenty of airtime on CNN. He's had plenty of airtime. No, you're not talking about back in the day, because back in the day...
No, I'm just talking about the fact that they...
People would have been disgusted if news networks talked about Roosevelt in his wheelchair, the way that Donald Trump has talked about
Sleepy Joe.
How about McCain? How about members of our armed forces who are, decorated heroes? Like, people would have been outraged and disgusted. They would not have voted that person into office, which, let's be honest, they did. I get it. Like, we did the first time. As a nation, collectively, he didn't win the popular vote. We know that. But he won the Electoral College, right? So he was our president for 4 years. He had his time. But, I think about the way that the news and the press handles the highest office in our land at this point in time. You wonder why other countries laugh at us. Look at what you do to the leader of our nation. You're part of the problem. It just makes me laugh that the news network that flies the flag the highest, or so they say, would discredit our nation's leader in the way that they do repeatedly, and then double down on we're laughing stocks of America, of the world.
We are, but it is.
Yeah, but that's been. Can I tell you, that's a long time coming. That's not just Sleepy Joe.
No.
Let's be very clear.
Yeah, that's 20 years in the making, 30 years in the making. No, it's true. It's true, but I think what's going on this election year is a little more out there than what went on previously. How do you feel about them taking them off ballots in states? How do you feel about that?
That's wild. You made a great point. I think we were talking about it a week or so ago, because obviously this has been going on and it's now multiple states. I know it's Colorado, and I think was it from somewhere else had said that they were going to try. I know it's going to go in front of the Supreme Court, obviously. If there's something on the books in those states that allows them to legally do it, then that means that there's legislators, the folks who wrote their laws and their state constitutions, either foresaw this, you know what I mean? Or, we're preparing for worst case scenarios, right? If it's just people willy-nilly saying, hey, we don't want him on our ballot, right? And because they have control of Congress in that state, then absolutely not. Like I said, if there's some sort of legal standing, then at the end of the day, this has been voted on. This has been written into law in that state. There's clearly, a paper trail there. But when you put it, the way you put it, which was this is effectively, your state legislators determining who you can and cannot vote for.
Listen, even if there's an issue. Even if there's a law precedent, which says, if he's under indictment, if it's this, if it's that, it's not fair to the American people.
So
it's not fair to the American people.
But okay, so if
vote on it. Put it to a vote in Colorado. Do you want him on the ballot or do you not want him on the ballot? Mm-hmm. Then you have an opportunity to at least give the people who want to see him on the ballot a chance. Mm-hmm. But you can't do it administratively, because if you do it administratively, you're going against the American people.
Yeah,
you're going against every American in Colorado that would vote for Trump. You're going against them.
I just think it's wild. I just think it's wild that we even have a person, a quote-unquote viable candidate, who is not eligible to be on the ballot in some of these states.
Well,
they would think that
there's a lot of fucked up laws on the books that you can find going back hundreds of years. I don't think in Texas you're allowed to get a blowjob even from your wife. So, that's a law. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of laws on the books that have been buried that someone can go dig up and go, hey, in 1812, they put this law on the books that says if the president farts on stage, we can take him off the ballot.
Is that the case? You have a platform.
There's a lot of, but
you don't.
Every state has those buried. Every state has.
But was that the precedent that was used?
I don't know what the precedent is.
Okay, so
it's not.
Just let's clarify that.
Yeah, I just said I don't know what the reason is. I just feel it's unfair to the voters of Colorado who support Trump that they cannot vote for their candidate. That's how I feel. Mm-hmm. That is against the American people.
Mm. Yeah.
That's how I feel. So if you put it to a vote prior, have an emergency vote in Colorado saying, do we want him on the ballot or we don't?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you on that at all. I mean, to your point, there are people in
and it's going to get worse because if they do it, then
we'll
some
ever,
other fucking state will find a precedent why they could take fucking the Democratic candidate off.
They don't have 47 federal indictments. I mean, it's just so wild that this guy is even a viable candidate. Like
it's just speaks, wild that there's indictments all over the country when 99% of them. 99.9% of them are just going to get thrown out of court. If they can pin one fucking thing on them, it would be a fucking miracle. But
you typically
that
there's ones that
typically in the justice system,
when you're out here claiming presidential immunity, like the man has already alluded to his own fear of being found guilty by throwing that one around on numerous occasions. Like he has been found guilty in the world of his private affairs for using funds inappropriately. That was all the stuff, what was it? There were millions of dollars corporate-wise, so other people took the fall. It was that was one of the federal indictments, I think, in New York, wasn't it?
It wasn't federal. New York indicted him on some kind of tax, blah, 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 and I don't think he was found guilty.
No. There was the
federal.
It was a corporate situation that had more to do with Trump Enterprises, and he was definitely. And when I say he, I mean that's a good.
I don't think they got an indictment against. I mean, I don't think they got a conviction against him.
Lenny, that's a good businessman. You're protected. You know that. It's like when you have umbrella insurance. But the point is,
that's why you open corporations, Kimmy.
No,
that's the whole
Lenny,
point.
That's okay. So your whole point is, I'm smart enough to know how to protect myself from the illicit, illegal activity that I engage in. But on the flip side of that, y'all are so big on he's such a great businessman, but part of his out is, well, I didn't know what they were doing. So how great of a businessman are you if you are not involved in the day-to-day and you don't know what people under your authority are doing, right? So you're basically saying if you're running our country, when shit goes left, well, I didn't know what they were doing. Like, you're the leader of the quote-unquote free world when you're the president of the United States of America. You better know what people are doing under your watch, and he seems to be real good at, I didn't know what they were doing. That's the shit that bothers me. Accountability.
My main problem with him is the not getting the proper people behind him when he was in office.
When he had them, though, he didn't being told you're a dum-dum.
Whatever it was, whatever they were telling him, he didn't like it. He got rid of them. That's really not.
That's not a good leader.
That's not the greatest thing. But by the same token, I like the fact that he speaks his fucking mind, and he's got the balls to step up to anybody who fucking is out there.
He's delusional, though. He's speaking his mind and spewing again falsities on a regular basis.
Let's hear some.
What do you mean? Let's hear some.
Let's hear some. Let's hear some besides the insurrection.
Okay, let me Google.
Let's listen to the speech. We should listen to the speech.
I don't care about his acceptance speech. I don't care.
But clearly, that's when he was lying, and that's why they didn't put it on.
No, they're talking about his campaign stops. They're talking about the moments when he stands up at Mar-a-Lago.
She was just talking about his speech.
No, she's saying this is why we repeatedly visit it. She said this has nothing to do with one speech. Rachel Maddow said, this is a conversation that we repeatedly revisit here as a news network. Should we give him the platform? Should we not? Whatever. Because he has repeatedly stood up in front of large numbers of people and spread, to use his phrase, fake news. And to your point, Len, once he says it to those people who are sitting there at that rally or whatever, that's gospel, right? Like, so as much as you want to point the finger right now at the CNN diehards, you got to point that finger at the Trump diehards, at the Fox, at everybody who doesn't really want to know all the information, who doesn't really want to make a well-informed decision. They want to vote for who they want to vote for. Point blank period. They want to vote for the guy who doesn't believe in pronouns. They want to vote for the guy who is going to quote unquote lock down our borders. What happened to that wall? I don't know. Like, wasn't there supposed to be a big ass wall?
Yeah. So
how'd that work out?
It looks like only the national desk put up 27 minutes of the speech. The C-SPAN didn't put up that long. They put up 4 minutes. Washington Post only put up a minute 30.
Was it self-aggrandizing? Was it just how great he is? And
USA Today put up 22 minutes.
Have you watched him speak? It's usually just like, Trump, he's our man, and he can't do it. No one can. It's probably 23 minutes of that.
Yeah, it could be. It could be rah-rah.
I'm so great. Have you seen how great I am? I'm the greatest. I'm friggin' great-tastic. I'll put 17 different suffixes on, I don't know. Like, it just, give me the 4 minutes of me.
The bestest.
Yep, all of it. All of it. But we can Google fact-checking Donald Trump. This should be fun. Sorry. Had I known this is what we were talking about, I could have come in with my papers printed out. Oh, factcheck.org, the Donald Trump archives. They got archives.
Mm-hmm. But do they have the same thing on Biden?
Latest, I'm sure.
So let's
is
not.
Biden known for lying, though, or just falling asleep?
Is Biden known for lying?
Or stumbling over his words?
Biden is probably pretty well known for lying.
Biden's
been in the government for
50 years.
Yeah, so
I'm sure he's lied.
He's lied a lot.
Or not made good on something he promised.
Which is a lie. Okay. If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, it's a lie. And don't get me wrong, everybody on the planet lies.
Not only that, though, you're talking about, I can say what I want to do, but if the American people don't vote me in a Congress and don't vote me in a Senate, like don't vote me in the proper tools, then I can't do. We've spent the last 8 years doing nothing at the federal level. How many government shutdowns have we just barely avoided, right?
Yeah.
Like, because these asshats can't, on both sides, can't get their heads out of their culos.
It's definitely both sides.
So to me, another 4 years of that shit is and no matter who wins in November of 2024, that is what we are staring down the barrel of. And that, to me, is what the American people should be more upset about than CNN not showing a 27-minute victory speech in Iowa. That's not he didn't win the election. It's Iowa. I get it. There's a whole lot more of those, right? Like, I'd be more concerned at the fact that we're going to be sitting in this stagnant bullshit cycle for another 4 years until we get some new blood into our state capitals, into our school boards, into Washington. Like, this is a much larger political problem than I think anybody has the bandwidth to really tackle, right? And so if you're mad about inflation, if you're mad that Miami has the highest grocery cost in the country, the city of, like, Miami, on average, $327 a week in groceries.
We like to eat good in Miami.
Highest out of the country, though. Like, that's crazy. But if you're mad about these things, if you're mad that you can't afford a house, even though you make 6 figures a year, right? You're mad that the mortgage rate, like, interest rates are now at, 8%, something crazy. Like, if you're mad about all these things, guess what? We're going to be looking at this for a long time if we don't figure out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. Listen, it's
with politics.
It's a big problem. They're making decisions. They're making decisions based on things that aren't affecting us today, things that might happen in 100 years, things that are not relevant to making change in the United States today.
Like, I'm just...
I mean, energy is one of the biggest issues in the United States. Mm-hmm. And energy costs tend to drive everything else. Mm-hmm. So, why does it cost more to get your UPS delivered? Why does it cost more to get your groceries delivered to the grocery store? It's all based on energy. Mm-hmm. If you have to pay twice as much for fuel, because that goes right to the consumer. All of this stuff goes right to the consumer. The whole electric push. I saw a video today of like 50 Teslas frozen in a fucking Tesla supercharging station because they can't charge their cars. The charger stopped working at fucking 8 degrees. So, you need infrastructure for that. And infrastructure requires energy. You want to have all electric cars, you got to have fucking nuclear or gas powered fucking plants putting out the energy, or coal powered plants putting out the energy. It's just, it's ridiculous what they have us spinning our heads around on. And meanwhile, they're giving hundreds of billions of dollars away, supposedly, away, so that those places can then buy stuff from American companies. The money never leaves. It never leaves, Gimme. What are we the biggest producer of in this country? Weapons. Who buys the weapons? They definitely don't want Americans buying the weapons. So where does our money go? It's our money.
Americans buy.
That's our money. Yeah, we do.
You're talking about defense contracts.
Yeah, I'm talking about weapons, real weapons that people are using in wars overseas with money that we gave them. So if our government is giving them money and then they're spending it in the United States, where's our money going? We might as well just give it to them ourselves.
Well, we do that with taxes anyway. It's kind of how they're recycling.
Anyways, we got off the chain a little.
Very different conversation.
I think we're running out of time anyway, so
I'm not mad at that. Again, I can understand your disapproval of CNN's reluctance to air the victory speech.
And like I said, I would feel the same way about Fox doing that.
And I get it, but on the other side of that, I can understand that there is in fact a cost. There's a societal cost. There's, also an intrinsic cost to the network somewhere. But right there, man the fuck up. You want to see the speech? Go find it.
Find it. We're going to watch it after this episode just to see how fucked up it was.
But again, it's like, stop waiting on everybody else to spoon feed you the information you supposedly need or want when you can go out and get it. We have everything at, our fingertips in 2024. I'm tired of everybody saying, oh, well, they told me this or they told me that. Bitch, how about you go out and you get the information for yourself?
Use your brain.
There you go.
And use several sources.
Boom.
Because not what you see on the internet is fact.
And there's nothing wrong with getting all sides or whatever.
Listen to CNN and listen to Fox. Listen to both of them, and then make your own fucking educated decision.
And then you'll at least understand where the other side is coming from. If you can wrap your brain around what they're being fed, it may make a little bit more sense to you when you get certain reactions, especially on these kind of platforms. I want
every CNN user to watch Fox tonight, and I want every Fox user to watch CNN tonight.
There you go. And then drop comments and let us know what you think about what you saw, all right? We'll see you next time. Remember, like, subscribe, share, follow, leave your comments. We're going to start actually replying and reposting some of those. We've been getting some good ones over the past few episodes. I've been in, I end up down the rabbit hole sometimes, and it's exhausting for my brain. But we do love when you guys engage and interact with us, so please continue to do so. And if you want to be a guest or somebody, who would be a great fit for a follow-up episode on something you see us talking about, please do not hesitate to send us that information, all right?
Yeah. Email KimmyB@ManTFupTV.com.
I haven't said that in all of 2024. All right, I love it. We'll see you next time.
Peace.